This is Murder in the Morning with Tony Bruschi and Stacey Cole.
The legal team defending Bryan Kohberger is trying to erase two words from the courtroom. Bushy eyebrows. That's the latest. There's a lot of other words they don't want in there, like psychopath, sociopath. There's a list.
They're getting picky, aren't they?
They are. Like, they want autism in there, but they don't want bushy eyebrows. Okay. So even though that was, part of the witness testimony from the girls that were survivors in the basement, can't put that in there. That looks pretty bad. Yeah, well, it does. It kind of sucks, but it is what they said in their text messages early on, which we've now learned. In a case involving the brutal stabbing deaths of the University of Idaho students, where DNA, phone records, and surveillance footage have all been presented as evidence, the defense is zeroing in on eyebrows. Why? Well, because one of the surviving roommates described the intruder as having thick eyebrows, and the prosecution sees this as a key detail linking Kohberger to the crime. Kind of sucks when evidence does that, right? But it doesn't mean you can just dismiss it. But the defense says it's unreliable and could unfairly sway the jury. Not so unreliable when you actually look at the text messages, which are now available, or the 911 call. They were pretty with it. They were very much with it. Did they think that their friends had been murdered at that time? No. They were two scared girls that were texting back and forth. They had heard some noise, and then one of them saw the intruder, which is where the bushy eyebrows come in, leave the property. After that, they went to bed. They didn't go and explore the house. They just thought, okay, he's gone, whatever. We don't hear anything else. It's probably done. And then they woke up at 10, like a college student would after a night of drinking and hanging out. And then they discover their friend's dead. That's pretty much the story. And why didn't they call 911 right away? That's the big question a lot of people are asking. Well, I think that's generational. I think if you look at how these people communicate, people of, younger age, so people of a younger age, the youth of our community, but people who've been brought up in a generation with basically cell phones and digital ways of communicating with their friends and their family and all that, versus a generation that did not. If we were caught in this situation at that moment in time where we think a killer might be in our house or something really absurd, in 1985 or 1995 or even 2005, you couldn't just text your friends. You couldn't just call. Maybe you could call your friends, but you couldn't text. You couldn't have that instant, oh, it's going to be okay, and have that communication with someone that could calm you down and allow you to just, chill. You would call 911. That was your only option. For these guys, that's not how it works. They're going to call their friends before anything else. That is how this generation is. It is what it is. And if you don't understand that, it looks really weird. But generations always look at other generations as being really weird. It's just how you're brought up. It's what's the norm. And that's the society they were brought up in. Those are the tools they were given to use. So when you look at it that way, it's not so shocking that they didn't call 911 right away. They called their friends. And even when they realized there was something really horrible, they called their friends. And another reason not to call 911 on a party house in college? Oh, I don't know.
Underage drinking.
Anything. What's in the house? Who has drugs? Who has something that's illegal? Probably somebody.
Yeah.
And the last thing you want when you're a party house in college, and I don't care what generation you're from, is the police to raid it.
Nope.
You're thinking of that first.
Anytime you saw the police pull up, it was like, oh, shit.
You're not thinking your friends are dead. That's the last thing on your mind. You're thinking they passed out, they were drunk, there was a weird guy here, it's a party house, people come and go. And that explains it. It really, I don't have any other, there's no evidence. There's absolutely nothing to point that these girls have any other reason for their story other than simply, as I say, and I don't say this to be denigrating in any way, shape, or form, because we have all been this. Every single one of us, young and dumb. Yeah. We were all young and dumb once. And that's just
there's
a simple
always
way of putting it.
that creepy weird guy who shows up in a party house too.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he's a murderer.
Yeah. And
Sure,
to
there was a party.
and to go and say, well, here's how I would have handled it. Really? How would have you have handled at 19 years old if you were to walk out there and you saw your 4 friends murdered brutally? How would you have handled that? Would you have called 911 immediately? Would you have called a friend because you're in shock and you need someone to support you? What the fuck would you do? Again, when 911 is not the biggest thing in your life. They didn't have Rescue 911. They didn't have Robert or William Shatner every week showing us how to call 911. That was a different generation. These guys had a different world. And it is what it is. So...
And I do want to add one more thing.
Yeah.
I am going to listen to 2 young women, talking about somebody with bushy eyebrows, because if there's somebody who knows eyebrows and eyelashes,
It's women.
it's women, and it's young women, because I can tell you what, theirs are probably on point. So
Yeah.
to say that we shouldn't be including bushy eyebrows in there, that is a very distinct feature that they focused on. They didn't focus on a zillion other things about this masked man dressed in black. They noticed his eyebrows.
Yeah.
And they noticed for a reason, because that's what they see when they look at people.
Yeah.
That's generational.
And look, it's a thing. It came out. They said it like immediately. It's there. It is black and white in those text messages with the timeline to go along with it. That's what they saw. It's not unreliable. It's what she saw. Mm-hmm. And let's take it back to the night of November 13th, 2022. It was a quiet college town, Moscow, Idaho, until it wasn't. Sometime in the early morning hours, 4 students, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, brutally stabbed to death in their off-campus home. 2 roommates were inside but unharmed. One of them, Dylan Mortensen, later told police she saw a masked man dressed in black walking past her. He had one distinct feature, bushy eyebrows. She told that to police, and she also told that to her roommate way before. So there's 2 accounts of this from the same person.
It's important.
And just like that, those 2 words became a central point of the case against Bryan Kohberger. Kohberger, a PhD student in criminology at nearby Washington State University, was arrested in December after investigators tracked a white Hyundai Elantra seen near the crime scene. Cell phone data placed him in the area multiple times before the murders. And then came the DNA. A sample found on the sheath of a knife left behind at the scene linked to Kohberger. This was the kind of evidence that made headlines, but here we are debating facial hair. Kohberger's attorneys argue that the eyebrow description is problematic. First, they say it's vague. Lots of people have thick eyebrows. Yeah, no one's saying they don't, but it was certainly a feature of this guy. Second, they pointed that Dylan was in shock, possibly in a frozen fear response, which she wasn't, which we now see from the timeline of events and the text messages. No, there wasn't a frozen in fear response, which could have affected how she processed and remembered details. No, you're wrong. And third, they've gone a step further, claiming that her own artwork, yes, her drawings, showed an unusual focus in eyes and eyebrows, making her observation even less reliable. Wouldn't that make it more reliable if that's a focus that you have? Mm-hmm. It's a pretty creative argument. Ann Taylor, a good one. Another one where the judge is going to go, shut the fuck up, in a much more kind way. And you're going to look, you got me again, which she looks every time he says, shut the fuck up. It's a pretty creative argument, but the prosecution is not buying it. For them, the eyebrows aren't just a random detail. They argue that this was one of the few physical descriptions given at the time, and it matches Kohberger. They also point out that while Dylan never identified him directly, her statements about the eyebrows is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Taken with the other evidence like his car, phone records, and the DNA, those eyebrows become more than just facial hair. They're another link in the chain. The defense isn't stopping at eyebrows, though. They're also pushing to keep words like murder, murder weapon, psychopath, sociopath out of the trial. We're arguing about verbiage at this point.
Yeah.
When we're arguing about verbiage and not actual evidence, I think Ann Taylor knows he's guilty as shit. I think she is just, we're at the last string. I mean, the other big argument this week was, it's autism. It's autism. Okay. That can explain obsessive behavior. It can explain not seeing things from the way other people do. It can very actually well explain his hatred towards women because he doesn't have the demeanor or doesn't understand how to have the demeanor to interact with women in a healthy way. But then it also very much plays into why he would be so frustrated with them as well.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
I don't see it being a positive at all. The only positive would be possibly swaying a jury on the death penalty. I do not see it being positive in the actual trial.
No, if anything, it's going to spare him the death penalty, but it's not going to spare him a conviction. If the evidence is laid out there, you're not going to get the jury to go, oh, but he's on the spectrum. He didn't know what he was doing. Yeah, he knew what he was doing.
When you're on the spectrum, it doesn't mean you don't know right from wrong.
Right.
You do. You just kind of pick up things differently. You have different drives than other people do. Again, it's a spectrum, so it very much changes. There's some that are very low functioning. There's some that are crazy fucking high functioning. Mm-hmm. And it can, like I've said 1,000 times, it can be a fucking superpower.
Oh my gosh. A couple weeks ago, why can't I remember her name? I just saw her in person. I had always wanted to see her. She's an animal welfare person. Oh my God.
I know, you told me about it too.
Yes. Why? I can't remember her name. She's one of my idols.
Jim Irwin's ghost.
No. Hang on. I'm looking it up because I just saw her speak.
And your point is she's on the spectrum?
She is on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And she talked Temple Grandin. Yeah. If you don't know who Temple Grandin is, look her up. She's amazing. She is on the spectrum. And she talked about how people with autism, how they view the world. And she has just this amazing perspective that some people view the world in shapes and colors, and that's how they process things. And it just opened up an entirely different way of looking at the world and how people see things and how people learn.
Yeah.
She is amazing in what she has done. She is extremely high functioning, brilliant.
Most people go ahead.
People in her family, I think it was her grandfather that created autopilot.
Yeah.
So the next time you're flying and you see the pilot walking around, it was her grandfather who created that.
Most of the shit you use every single day was created by somebody on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. Because it takes special brains to do special shit. And we can throw it out there as we do today where it's, this big I think this needs to be narrowed down a bit because it's such a broad scale and people, if you don't get it, if you don't have someone in your life, if you're not that, it almost, some people I've met where it's like you're saying the word retarded in 1994. That's they're like in the corner shaking. No. Hey kids, I've said this forever. I think I'm there too. I've never been officially diagnosed, but when I watched an HBO doc years ago about people on the spectrum, specifically about Asperger's, I was like, oh, fuck. That explains me. And it's a superpower. It's not bad. It can be very, very beneficial. And I think Kohberger, he could have used this in a very beneficial way. He could have probably been a really good investigator. It's probably part of why he thought if he gets away with this is my own conjecture, he could be even better. Not a good thought. Not something that you really think he should have thought that through a little bit more because you don't want to go down that road to get experience on something like that. But I can kind of get where that thought may have crossed his mind. But that's where you enter personality disorder. And those disorders then can work hand in hand with someone on the spectrum. So if he is a sociopath, if he is a psychopath, and does not have empathy at all, The two can create a monster. And from day one on Kohberger, it's exactly what I have always thought. He's on the spectrum, and he also has a personality disorder. And that's the fucking recipe that is Bryan Kohberger. That's my conjecture. Not a doctor, but I think we're getting there, and we're discovering that's exactly what he is. Because it's not that hard to figure out. They argue that using these terms before a conviction is reached is unfair and could bias the jury. Essentially, they're trying to control the language of the trial so much as they can. The prosecution, of course, is pushing back, saying that calling a murder isn't a murderer isn't exactly a stretch. With the trial set to begin in August, these pretrial battles are setting the stage for what's to come. The prosecution is expected to seek the death penalty, and Kohberger's attorneys will continue to fight every piece of evidence, every witness statement, and apparently every eyebrow reference that comes their way. Kohberger's next appearance is in April, where the judge will rule on these motions. Until then, the legal chess game continues, both sides maneuvering for an advantage before the jury is ever seated. And it's going to be interesting because now with the judge Hippler saying, we can't keep everything under seal, it seems like every day this week we've found out some new pieces of this case that we were not thinking we were going to see until this reaches an actual trial. Here's what I'm interested in seeing. The shopping receipts. What's on the Amazon account? What did he buy? That's going to be pretty damning if we find a K-bar knife on there. And what was he looking up? What's the search history? What's going on there? What's going on in his texts? What is his activity online? Who is he talking to? Is he in some of these like incel, I hate women type groups because I'm too fucked up to understand that it's me and not them? I think that is going to be very, very revealing. I think so too.
They wanted to keep out the algorithm too.
Yeah.
You know, let's see how the algorithm looked at his searches and went, well, if you like knives, maybe you'd like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my algorithm, I get all kinds of stuff about cats.
Yeah.
And the keto diet, and what else do I get? I get a ton of like hand lotion. Yeah. I mean, you can tell what I search.
Yeah, and here's the deal. If you're fighting to keep that out, there's a reason you're fighting to keep that out. Correct. If it was just like normal shit, there'd be no reason to fight to keep it out. Like, oh, look, he likes Nutella or whatever the fuck somebody's buying on Amazon.
Yeah, he loves pickleball. He was looking at rackets. He was looking at whatever. Yeah, that's fine. Golf. Yeah, he was looking at the latest and greatest balls.
Yeah, and take it. Go for it. If there's something you don't want the jury to see, you're going to fight that evidence.
Yeah, you are.
Which they have been doing. So it tells me there's some dark shit on there that my prediction is Ann Taylor already knows he's fucked. And she's just, she's thrown anything at the wall that she can, but she knows doomsday is coming. So she better get something in line to try and save his life. I think that's why we're seeing some of these arguments being made right now. Because I do think there is still the very real possibility that some of this evidence might come out from under seal. And it's going to be so damning that we're going to go, why are we even having a trial?
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
So we'll see what happens. Very interesting revelations in the Kohberger case. There's going to be a lot more coming very soon. You don't have to wait for the trial anymore now that we know what the judge's perspective is. Press subscribe wherever you're downloading podcasts so you don't miss anything on this case. If you're on YouTube, press subscribe, hit the bell, whatever the hell they're doing this week, and don't miss any of our coverage on this case.
The world of true crime never stops, and neither do we. Press subscribe now to get daily updates, in-depth analysis, and expert opinions from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. He was charming, handsome, a devoted husband, a doting father. When his wife died tragically in a freak accident, everyone pitied him. He played the role so well, grieving widower, devastated, single dad, just trying to put the pieces back together. But the thing about perfect men, they're usually hiding something. And this one was hiding everything. The affair, The insurance policy, the other wife in another state who had no idea she was married to a walking crime scene. If she had only subscribed to True Crime Today, Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts, she could have listened to Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi ad-free. And before everyone else, she could have seen through the lies. She could have gotten out while she still had the chance. Instead, she's just another case we'll be covering next week. Don't be her. Subscribe now to True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts.